Hey everyone, it's Neon Antlers, and today I'm going to be ranking all the cores in Animal Crossing. So if you don't know, a core is basically an aesthetic or an island theme. I'm going to be starting from the very bottom in F tier, the sole F tier in fact, kidcore. Kidcore is an aesthetic composed of primary colors, toys, anything kid related basically. And it hurts my eyes just to look at it, to even think about it. To whoever invented Kidcore, why did you do this to me and to the community? Kidcore should never have existed, and I'm sad to even have to include it in this tier list, but it's here to stay unfortunately, so it deserves its own tier in F tier. Okay, so next we have D tier, and I'm putting Citycore in D tier. Controversial maybe, but warranted. So Citycore, as its name implies, is just basically a city. That's it. That's literally it. It's very boring, very linear, lots of straight lines everywhere. It's just a city. Why don't you just go outside if you want to see a city? Maybe if you don't live in a city, it's fine. You want to have your city life fantasy in Animal Crossing, totally fine. But for me, I live in a city. I have lived in cities my whole life. And I play Animal Crossing to get away from the city life. I don't need it in Animal Crossing. I just don't understand the appeal of cities at all. And you're basically going to be decorating with tons of castle walls and the storefront items. So it just gets repetitive in my opinion. Sure, it can look nice, but I don't know, there's like no soul to it in my opinion. So sorry if you like Citycore, but I don't at all. Moving on to the next core and joining Citycore in D tier is where is it? I'm trying to find it. Actually, is that the only D tier? I think that's the only D tier. Yeah, I'm looking at the rest, and I don't think anything else deserves to be in D tier. Wow, okay, yeah, so not bad. That means it can only go up from here. Okay, so in C tier, I am putting Jungle Core / Tropical Core / Swamp Core. And the reason being is that I feel like we don't have enough items to fully realize the Jungle Core vision. I've seen some really good Jungle Core islands, don't get me wrong, but it's just a ton of bamboo, and I feel like we need like at least one more tree item that could fit into Jungle Core. Well, we do have palm trees as well, but it's still not enough in my opinion. But it can still look really pretty. So I'm putting it in C tier. Joining Jungle Core in C tier will be Zencore. So otherwise known as Japanese inspired. It's in C tier because although of course it's very beautiful and we have tons of Japanese items, for some reason I just can't get into it. Originally, I wanted my island to be Japanese inspired. I even had a Japanese Zen garden area in my island that I tore down. But because when I finished building it, I was satisfied with it. But the longer I had it on my island, I grew tired of it. It just, for some reason, it just didn't click with me. And all the Japanese items we have are, pretty much almost all bamboo or stone. So it just, I don't know, I just still felt kind of samey to me, even though we really do have probably more Japanese items than any other theme in Animal Crossing. Yeah, I feel bad for putting it here, but I don't know, I just can't get into it for some reason. Okay. So also joining these two in C tier is, let's see, Castlecore. So Castlecore is similar to Citycore, except it's more medieval. And the reason it's higher than Citycore is because it has a more natural element to it. So maybe you have a forest outside your castle. Maybe you have a village that's being overgrown. Maybe you have some crops. And I just like the fantasy element inherent in Castlecore. Even though they both use the castle walls, it's still more medieval. It's more fantasy inspired. So Castlecore deserves to be above Citycore. Okay, and I think that's it for C tier. Yeah, that's it for C tier. So the rest of these are pretty good cores. All right, so I'll start B tier with Elegant Core. And Elegant Core is a beautiful aesthetic. It involves the use of tons of the statues, lots of white, lots of natural elements as well, lots of plants. And if you've never seen an Elegant Core island, definitely visit at least one because it's just beautiful. Beyond that, though, it's pretty to look at, but I mean, what else is there? It's just pretty. That's all I really have to say about it. I feel like it's missing something to elevate it. Okay, so on the other hand, we have Farmcore. And Farmcore has always been popular in Animal Crossing. It's now even more popular, and it could be better realized with the 2.0 update. And it might be controversial to put in B tier, but hear me out. I don't like that there's sort of a lack of diversity from island to island in Farmcore because you're always going to have crops, and there's just a limited amount of ways you can lay out your farmland. I know about the diagonal farm stuff, but it's beautiful, but it's not enough. I just don't like seeing the same thing in every island. So that's why I put Farmcore in B tier. But of course, we have plenty of amazing farm-related items we can use, and Farmcore islands look great. So I'm sad to put it in B tier. Okay, and let's see. The last B tier contender is Urbancore. So Urbancore differs from Citycore because it's more industrial. Maybe there's trash everywhere, there's a lot of metal objects, and it's just a little more chaotic. So that's why I like Urbancore a lot more than Citycore. I don't like the structure and linearity of Citycore, and Urbancore breaks that apart. So that's why I believe it deserves B tier, in my opinion. Yeah, that's it for B tier. So let's go ahead and move on to the A tiers, the best cores. Immediately, I'm putting Springcore here. It was very popular, and it still is, and it's here to stay for good reason. Springcore involves the use of lots of natural elements, pastel colors, especially green colors, soft colors, white, and it deserves its place in A tier because it's really pretty. We have tons of items we can work with it to make it happen. And the reason why it's not an S tier is because, again, you can say this critique for a lot of the cores, but it does get to feel kind of samey from island to island. I don't know if it's just because I've seen a lot of Springcore islands that they're all kind of just blending together now, but I think it may be the color palette that you kind of have to stick to that's kind of holding Springcore back. Because I don't know what other colors you would use besides, like, you know, the soft greens, whites, yellows, and browns. You can introduce maybe some blue, some pink, but I feel like there's just not enough color variation to make it possible to differentiate islands enough to warrant it being S tier. So it's staying in A tier for me. Joining Springcore is a really cool aesthetic, Cybercore. So this includes cyberpunk, synthwave, vaporwave stuff, any sort of futuristic, dystopian island. And I love vaporwave. I love Cyberpunk, so it pains me to have it in A tier, but we really just don't have enough Cyberpunk items. We have so little, so we just really can't fully realize a Cybercore island. We can make it work, but it's it's a stretch. So sadly, there's just not enough items to keep it in, to put it in S tier. So even though it deserves to be an S tier, even though if we had more cyber items, it could be an S tier easily, we just don't have enough to work with to make it happen at the time being. So sadly, it's an A tier. All right, and joining Cybercore and Springcore in A tier is Fairycore, another very popular aesthetic. And the reason why I can't put Fairycore in S tier is because it's the same with Springcore. Its color palette sort of holds it back, and we don't have as many items with Fairycore to work with as with Springcore. I know they have a lot of overlap, but you're always going to pretty much use the mushroom items, pink, blues, maybe purples. We don't have too many like mystical items to work with. So I feel like they just also kind of get samey from island to island. So for that reason, I won't put it in S tier. Okay, and joining Fairycore and the last A tier core, sadly, Forestcore. So Forestcore is my favorite theme, but I have to be fair and I have to apply the same critique that the other A tiers have to Forestcore. They get a little bit samey because we just don't have enough items to work with for Forestcore. We have a ton of natural elements that we can use and items that fit that theme, but for Forestcore specifically, the trees are really important. And we only have like 3 that we can really work with, and those are the cedar trees, the regular trees, and the new item, the pine tree. Other than that, you can try to make other plants fit in with it, but it doesn't look good in my opinion, because believe me, I'm making a Forestcore island and I've tried like every plant basically to make it work, and the only ones that could really fit in and make it blend in well are the pine trees, the wheat fields, the triangular topiaries, and everything else is just like the potted plants are not, they don't blend in well. They stand out very clearly. And we have that prehistoric tree that doesn't really have enough leaves on it to fit a forest island. And of course, we can't use the cactus. So sadly, we don't have enough trees to make Forestcore an S tier contender. But it's my favorite theme, and it deserves a spot in A tier rather. If we had like one more tree item, it would be an S tier in my opinion. But alas, moving on to S tier, Postapocalyptic. So Postapocalyptic is a dystopian theme where there's been some sort of catastrophe that's destroyed the landscape, and nature has started to overgrow and overtake the city or town that had been previously there. So I love this aesthetic because you have a blend of urban or city elements and natural elements, and it just looks so beautiful. It's not samey at all because you can mix it up in so many ways. I feel like themes that take one element and incorporate the use of another element are just so much easier to make work because you have so much more to work with in the first place. And related to post-apocalyptic, you'll see that I have a abandoned kidcore here. And even though I hate kidcore, because it has post-apocalyptic elements, if you've never seen an abandoned kidcore, it's basically a kidcore item after, some sort of disaster, and nature just overtakes it, and it looks, it's just a completely different world than regular kidcore. So please visit a abandoned kidcore or post-apocalyptic kidcore island if you haven't, because I never would have thought I would have liked a kidcore island ever. But abandoned kidcore is incredible, so it deserves an S tier. And of course, we can't talk about cores without talking about the queen, the originator of cores, Cottagecore. So Cottagecore, you already know. If you're watching this video, if you're a fan of Animal Crossing, you know all there is to know about Cottagecore already. There's no need to explain it. She's here. She is the core, and there's no denying she's S tier. Yeah, there's no denying it, and there's nothing bad to say about Cottagecore. There's so much you can do with Cottagecore. Maybe the only con you could say about it is that it's cluttered, but that's not something you need to incorporate in a Cottagecore island. You can make it cluttered if you want, but it's not a necessity. Yeah, so that's all the cores. I know I didn't include every single core, but these are the biggest cores, I would say. If I missed a core that you love, please let me know in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.